I always had this question whenever I started learning with business people or anybody, Pirkei Avot, I saw that I was dealing with people who wanted to improve and they were looking for character development. And I said, therefore, here's a book that is dedicated completely and focused only on character development. It's the only book in the entire oral Torah, the Torah Shebaal Peh, that's focused only on this particular point over here. I said, terrific. So we started learning. And as soon as we would start to learn, a question percolated in my mind. And it may be obvious at first, and I searched around for answers, and the question is that the Mishnah begins, Moshe kibul Torah Sinai. Moshe gets the Torah from Sinai. Masar Yeshua gives it over to Joshua. Yeshua is Zakanim l'Neviim, Neviim Misaruah li'Anshe Knesset Gedola. V'hem Amru Shlosh Devarim. Moshe gets the Torah from Sinai, gives it to Joshua. Joshua to the elders to the prophets, and the prophets give it over to the men of the Great Assembly. That's a 900-year spread from the time of Matan Torah, more than 3,300 years ago, until the time of the beginning of Bayesheni, 2,400 years ago. So it's approximately 900 years of history that's covered in the beginning of that Mishnah. And finally, we hear what the men of the Great Assembly had to say. And what is that? Havos musuni medin, be deliberate in judgment. V'hamidu salmidim harve, stand up many students. V'asu siyag laTorah, and to make offense for the Torah. Beautiful. Very nice idea. They tell us three beautiful things. But what did we have to start off to this book of ethics with a history lesson for? I thought it was a book dedicated to ethics. So the answers that I saw, the Rishonim and a few other places, is that the reason why that lengthy introduction to the words of the men of the Great Assembly was necessary to let us know that ethics was an original intent of the Torah. Derech Eretz Kodem LeTorah. The Torah wants us to be improved people, wants us to work on our character, wants us to become better and more improved personalities. That's terrific, beautiful. And to understand that these words that look deceptively simple, look like something that could have fallen out of a Jewish fortune cookie, is really a hot lava that's flowing down from Har Sinai. And that's beautiful. That's very nice. It connects the words that are being spoken to the source of Torah itself. And I appreciate that that's a very, very nice answer, but it didn't satisfy the question why the history lesson was necessary to put over here at the beginning of the Pirkei Avos, which is dedicated to ethics and character development, until I heard the following story. And it's a true story. And I shared it with the person about whom the story was written. He wrote it about himself, and he appreciated very, very much the application. It seems that there was a young boy whose father unfortunately passed away, and the young man wanted to take over his father's business. And his mother told him, discouraged him, you don't have to do it, it's not necessary, we'll make it somehow, we'll be able to pull through. But him, wanting to be that young hero to his mother, in spite of his mother telling him, you don't have to do it, he took on the challenge, and he stepped up. And business being what it is very often, and competitors being what they always are, they took advantage of his inexperience, his naivete in this particular field. And before he had a chance to learn the hard-won lessons of business, he had fumbled what his father had spent 25 years of his life building up. And when he came to that terrible realization that he hasn't got any more customers, and he hasn't got any more cash, and he hasn't got any more whatever it is, product, and he has no place to turn, he doesn't know how he's going to face his mother, he doesn't know how he's going to face himself in the mirror, he doesn't know how he's going to face his creditors, his head was bobbing between his legs, and he was sighing and crying like a little child. He didn't know what to do. And a knock came at the door. And a tall, distinguished gentleman, we'll call him Rav Pinkus, comes to visit him, enters in, reaches into his pocket, and drops an envelope in front of this young man. The young man looks at the envelope, studies it for a second, and says, well, I'm not really a charity case, realizing this fellow wants to give him something. He says, no, look inside. And he counts out there $50,000 cash. This is a story from a long time ago. $50,000 is a lot. It's still a lot, but it was a lot back then. Maybe it was worth millions of dollars back then when the story happened. And the young man says, listen, my father, we always gave charity, but we're not charity receivers, and I'm not accepting it like that. And the man says, it's a loan. It's not charity. And the young man says, I haven't got collateral. I haven't got anything to back up the loan. I'm afraid I'm a big credit risk, so I don't advise you to give me the money. And the man says, I'm going to bypass the requirement for credit for any collateral. And even though you haven't got anything to back it up, He says, I want you to have the loan. And the boy, thinking about his mother and thinking about the situation, says, okay, an angel I'm not. And he takes the envelope. And the gentleman leaves, or Pinchas leaves. And now, having learned some of those hard-won lessons of business and life, he went back up and he was able to build everything back. And he gained customers, and he started producing and got credit back. And before a few years, he had now built up his father's business beyond anybody's wildest expectations. And with great ease, he was able to skim $50,000 off the top of the business, stuff it into an envelope, and march proudly back to this Reb Pinchas's office. He knocks on the door and enters in. Reb Pinchas sees this young man standing in front of him, knows who he is, recognizes him, and the young man drops the envelope with $50,000 in front of him with great pride. And Reb Pinchas now looks at him and says, thumbs through and counts $50,000, says, I can't accept it. He said, what do you mean you can't accept it? Remember, I told you, I wasn't accepting a grant. I wasn't accepting a gift. I was looking, so I'm paying back. Here's the money, I'm paying it back. He says, I can't accept it. He says, it's a loan. I'm paying back the loan that you spoke about. And here's the loan, $50,000, not a penny more, no ribbons, not a penny less. I don't owe you anything else. This is the $50,000. He says, I can't accept it. He says, I don't understand. If it's not a loan, if it's not a gift, and it's a loan, then why can't you accept the money? And Reb Pinchas says, let me tell you a story. It's a story within a story. He says, I've been running this business over here for the last 40 some odd years. I've had great success. And he says, at a certain moment, he says, a few years ago, 5 years ago, he says, I reached too high too fast. And in one fell swoop, my feet went out from under me. He says, I had hundreds of people that I was supporting, didn't know I was their source of income. I had institutions that were being supported by me. I had so many people working for me. He said, and now I fumbled everything. And when the terrible realization dawned on me, I was sitting in my office and I was crying like a little baby, not knowing what's going to happen with these people, what's going to happen with me, what's going to happen with my family. He says, and believe it or not, a knock came at my door and a gentleman came in and he dropped in front of me an envelope. And I looked inside the envelope, I peered there and I count $50,000 cash. I said, I can't accept this kind of money. I'm not a charity recipient, I'm a charity giver. With great pride, I'm proud. And the man says, it's not a gift, it's a loan. I told him, I don't have collateral, I haven't got anything else to back up a loan. He says, it's a loan when and or if you're ever able to pay it back. He says, if you're ever able to pay it back, he says, don't pay it to me. He says, pay it on forward to somebody else. He says, the day I knocked on your door, he says, that was the day that I was repaying my loan. Now I'm asking you to do the same thing. Take this money, do some research, find a worthy candidate, and give the money to him, and give him the same mandate when he's able to pay it back to pass it on to somebody else. Now with that story in mind, we can go back to our mission in Pirkei Avot that says the following thing, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, Moshe got the Torah at Sinai. What did Moshe Rabbeinu do with the Torah at Sinai? Did he go into the basement and learn by himself and learn Kabbalah and get high close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu all by himself? Or did he spend 40 years of his life, he dedicated his Vehigisa B'Yom of Alayla, dedicating it to irrigating the hearts and minds of the Jewish people so that every Jewish father could fulfill the mitzvah of V'shenantam Levanecha, and that the Torah should be passed on from generation to generation. And after Moshe Rabbeinu was finished with his life's work on the edge of Eretz Yisrael, he passed them over to Yoshua. And he gave it over to Yoshua, and Yoshua built up the Jewish people and landed them into the land of Israel for 14 years. And he gave it over to the elders, and the elders to the prophets. And finally, 900 years after the beginning, we hear the words of the men of the Great Assembly telling us the same thing. How do we keep this gift going? How is it that we build up the family business and we pass it on to the next pair of responsible hands who is then going to do the same thing? And the answer is, Havu Masuni Bidin, to be deliberate in making judgment. Where are we going to live? Where are we going to send our children to school? Who are we going to marry? What type of values do they have? What type of families are they coming to? Do they agree with the same ideal, with the same principles that we have? V'hamidu salmidim harbe. Build up the family business. Make as much influence as you possibly can, good influence on the world. Have children. Do mitzvot. Do as much as you can for the community to build back and to rebuild up the community as much as you possibly can. Contribute. Give tzedakah as much as you possibly can. V'hamidu salmidim harbe. To make sure the students are hamidu, that they're stand-up students. And the last thing, v'asu sigla Torah, to make sure that the currency that you're passing on is the currency you received. If it was a gold standard Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai currency, then make sure that that's the standard, that's the currency that you're passing on to the next generation. And therefore, we see baked into that lesson of that first Mishnah is really the first ethic that when you receive something good, the idea is to make proper use out of it, and then to make sure that somebody else has access to it so that they can also make good use out of it. And therefore, the Torah is the gift that keeps on giving. Every generation received something, and it becomes built up, and they pass it on to the next generation. I know a few times I've mentioned this idea. Had a father and son breakfast one time. And a few other situations, there's always this one fellow that comes over me, I'll anticipate it right now, who comes over to me afterwards and says, Rabbi. I said, what is it? And I know it's going to come. Usually the male of the species. He said, Rabbi, where's that guy with the $50,000? You know, they're looking for the guy they got stuck over there in that part of the story. Where's the guy with the $50,000? And the answer is that when we examine the fact that we have a Torah today, we have a Shas, that we have Rabbanim, who know the entire Torah. And we have halachot, and we have yeshivot, and we have a Sefer Torah with all the osas. Zos HaTorah, Asher Moshe Lefnei Bnei Yisrael Al Pi Hashem Biyad Moshe. That's the Torah. Without any shinuim, without any deviations, that's it. And we have all of this, and we have a community. And we know when Shabbat is, and we know the thousands of halachas of Shabbat. And we have all this thing at our fingertips over here. We have something much more valuable, something much more powerful than $50,000. If you take what it takes to raise a child from pre-1A all the way up to the chuppah, the Gadol Torah l'chuppah l'maisim tovim, and you calculate the blood, the sweat, the tears, and tuition with compounding interest over 3,300 years, that what we have in our hands today is something which is worth more than $50,000. It takes $50,000 to raise that child. And to create what we have, this envelope of Torah that's around us, this opportunity that's around us, is worth much more than $50,000. So let's not get lost over here. We have a gift. Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us a gift. And to prove that, I think this is the value of the first Mishnah, Perkei Avos, we take a look very briefly at the second Mishnah in Perkei Avos, where it says, Ashlosha Devarim ha'olam omed, ala Torah v'ha'avoda v'al gemilas chasadim. What is Torah? One word, Torah. Doesn't say Asik Torah, business of Torah. Doesn't say Limud Torah. Torah, one word. I'm curious, what part of Torah? Maybe all parts. Avoda. Doesn't say, we spoke about work once before. Avoda Shebalev, work of the heart. Karbanot, what type of work? Going out to work. Doesn't say one word. But when it comes to Chesed, it says Gemilus Chasadim. Why Gemilus Chasadim? What's the difference between Chesed and Gemilus Chesed? I'd like to offer an answer. And the answer goes like this, the following. That what is Gimel? Gimel is Chesed. So that we understand that the Hebrew letter, the Lashon HaKodesh is different than A, B, C doesn't mean anything. C-A-T doesn't spell cat. It spells, the word cat teaches us how to pronounce it in the picture of a cat, if a feline wakes up in our mind. And in the Eastern languages, it has a concept of a picture of a cat. But how to pronounce it is not in the word itself. The Hebrew was the original language of the world. And therefore, the letter Gimel itself tells us something. There's a Shem Ha'os, the name of the letter, Gimel, Gamal. What does Gimel stand for? If you take the letter and you even take the parts of the letter, Gimel. If you take one, you have to look at the first time a letter is used in Chumash, not as a prefix. So you have Me'oras Hagadolim. You discount the prefix, Hagadolim. So the first time Gimel is used at the beginning of a word, it tells insight into what the letter is about. Gadol, to grow. Gimel means to grow. Mal, the second part, Gimel means to cut. Mal means to cut. Growing, cutting. Okay, you got a little insight over here. The Shem Ha'os Gamal also. What is a Gamal? A Gamal is a camel. What's the specialty of a camel? Okay, if I have a rented beast store, rent a truck or a car or a vehicle. So each thing has a reason. A bicycle is going to take you across town quickly and cut through traffic, whatever. A truck, you want to carry a piano. Same thing, a donkey, you want to carry a heavy object. A horse, if you want to carry something across town, a letter, across town. What do you need a camel for? What do you need a camel for? So the specialty of a camel, you have a long distance run, a long distance trip. So he fills up with water. He fuels up. You can put a lot of gallons of fuel into it, of water, and then boom, he can cut from his source and he can go into the arid place. He can go on and carry on for a long period of time. That's the specialty of a camel. He grows and then he cuts. That's the concept of Gamal. So the first time that we find Gamal in the Torah is not by the camels with Eliezer by the well. We find Gamal. It says, Biyom hi Gamal es Yitzchak. It says that Avram Avinu, when Yitzchak became 2 years old, so then he made a party, a Mishta Gadol, Biyom hi Gamal es Yitzchak. He made a big party on the day that Yitzchak graduated. He didn't need anymore to milk and to nurse from Sarah. The graduation was on not needing his mother, on being able to stand up on his own, on being able to chew his own food. Graduation, that's what it's all about. That he became a stand-up student, v'hamidu salmidim harbe. And therefore, since he doesn't need his mother anymore, and since he's able to do something on his own, then that's an aspect of gemilas chasadim. So I wanted to say like this, that what is gemilas chasadim as opposed to chesed? I see a bumper sticker that says, do a random act of kindness. Okay, that's chesed. Okay, somebody dropped something, I picked it up. Somebody needs help over here, I'm carrying him with a bundle, I help him get into the car. Okay, very, very nice. That's all chesed. Gemilas chesed is a program of chesed, where you help somebody to accomplish what it is that they can now do that same service for somebody else. Like the old Chinese proverb, if you give a man a fish, he has fish for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he has fish for a lifetime. Teaching somebody how to learn so that they can learn on their own, so that you don't need Rebbe anymore, and you can teach somebody else, and now you become a teacher of Torah to somebody else. That is a program called Gemilas Chasadim, where a person is now doing something for somebody else. And they're taking, and when they're in the process of taking, they're taking only in order to give, and therefore their taking is considered giving, because they're absorbing at that time. If the person is absorbing, even if he's taking, but he's taking with the premise that not that he needs the giver and he's going to become dependent upon the giver, but he's taking with the idea that now he wants to be able to produce and to deliver things and deliver that product to somebody else. He's learning Torah in order to be able to teach other people Torah. He's learning Torah in order that he should be able to raise a beautiful, wonderful Jewish family. He's passing that value further. Then that's the concept of Gemilas Chesed. And therefore we see that same value is woven beautifully into the second Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. And that is the first ethic that we have been receiving a gift, and whatever gift we received, the idea is to build up the family business and then to pass it successfully on to the next generation. Eilu Devarim, these are the things that the world stands on. Shlosha Devarim ha'olam omed, al Torah, al ha'avoda, ve'al in particular, and on particular, Gemilas Chasadim, the type of chesed that's a program of chesed that takes what it is that we've received and what it is that was been given to us, and not just as takers, but take it as givers, that we're receiving it in order to build it up and to pass it on to somebody else successfully. That is the pillar on which the world stands. Thank you.